picture is just for you, Lacey. I updated my slides. So that's where we left off. And
Thank you.
that's Amy Coney Barrett's real body and neck. And this is the newest Supreme Court Justice. And her full name is Ketanji Brown Jackson. So we have a federal Supreme Court that is 5 males and 4 females. And so diverse when it comes to the old traditional, which I still think is the only valid gender distinction, male and female, but that's just a personal opinion. But diverse also with a Hispanic woman, 2 African Americans, Elena Kagan, some of these justices are Jewish, of the Jewish faith, and then all the rest are Roman Catholic, I believe.
Hannah had to go for a senior thing.
Okay. I'm not sure what Amy Coney Barrett's religion is. I don't know if she's Catholic or not, but at one time there used to be 6 Roman Catholics and 6 Jews. And I don't know what Ketanji is. Have to look that up. So a fairly diverse Supreme Court that when it started out, right, it would have been 9 Caucasian men. So, all right, there's our Supreme Court building. Completed in 1935. If any of you ever have to go there for a case, that is where you would go. If I remember correctly, this is the entrance that has many of the ancient lawgivers on the carvings here. I believe Moses is in the middle, and then you have like Confucius, and then you would have maybe some Greek philosophers and some of the famous ancient lawgivers to symbolize that this is the place where justice is to be found. This obviously is Greek architecture, right? Because we designed a lot of our Capitol buildings after the Greek Republic, since we are a republic. All right, so what types of jurisdiction does our court system have? Did I ever hit record? Yes.
Federal, state, and local.
Yeah. Those are the levels. But the types begin with original jurisdiction, and that is the court that has the right to hear a case for the first time. And usually this is done on the local level when it comes to trial law. If a crime happens in Leflore County, then the original jurisdiction would go to the county courthouse. Unless, of course, there was, let's say, someone murdered an FBI agent, then that would, well, let's start with an Oklahoma. Let's start with an OSBI agent. That's like the Oklahoma FBI, but it's the OSBI. let's say an OSBI agent was murdered in LaFleur County, then the jurisdiction there would most likely be a state court. But if something happened between two citizens, between a citizen of Panama and Heavener, then the jurisdiction would be the courthouse in Poto. And so you got local, state, and federal jurisdiction levels. But after the original type of jurisdiction, the second type is appellate. This is a court that has a right to hear a case on appeal. And this is when you usually appeal to a higher court. If the defendant loses the case and they want to contest the result, then they would appeal. See how appeal and appellate are very similar? They would appeal to a higher court. And remember, the higher courts don't decide innocence or guilt, but only if the lower court followed the laws and procedures correctly. There is exclusive jurisdiction, which is something that the Constitution gives only to federal courts. And these include laws that are national laws, and federal governments, along with other governments like a state government or a foreign government. So if the state of Oklahoma wanted to sue the state of Texas, that would be heard on a federal level. And then there's concurrent jurisdiction, which are cases that can be decided in state or federal courts. Just very quickly, and you'll have access to these slides today. You can see kind of what the courts handle, but in Oklahoma, we also have 9 Supreme Court judges or justices. And I'll show you our Supreme Court here in a little bit. We have a Court of Criminal Appeals with 5 judges, a Court of Civil Appeal with 12 judges, a trial court with 9. We have 73 district judges and 77 associate judges, 87 special judges, and then 10 judges for workman's comp. So let's see who is the fastest math person here as we add these up. Looks like 205 state judges. Did anybody get that? Anybody a math whiz?
No.
No? Camden or Job, are you guys math wizards? Because they usually say guys are more mathematical and scientific, and girls are more towards English and history. Well, maybe not history. No, no, and no from the guys. So all righty.
I've never had a male math teacher.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
the tides are changing because my daughter is a math major. And she is going to go on and get her master's to be a, raise your hand if you've heard of it, biostatistician.
She sounds pretty awesome.
She is. Anybody heard of a biostatistician? So, bio deals with like biology and life, and statistician is statistics. So that would be like numbers and math. So she's going to do research in the medical field. My son is studying to be an aerospace engineer, and he is in his first year in a PhD program at Texas A&M. So literally, he's going to be a rocket scientist. They're real things. So, and I know you're wondering how when you see me, but I think I showed you a picture of my wife. Not only is she beautiful and awesome, but she's pretty smart too. So my kids were blessed with her brains and my all around awesomeness and great personality. If I can humbly say so myself. Here's our state Supreme Court building. So if you go to Oklahoma City and become a state judge, this is where you'd be working. Here's the doors to the Supreme Court. What do you think those 9 pictures are? Anybody? Bueller? What are those 9 pictures? How many judges are there?
Where justices?
Yeah, the judges, the justices. They get their own portrait. Here's what it looks like on the inside. Got these marble pillars, very intricate architecture. See those green curtains? That's where they put their robes on. So they come in somewhere back here, enter their little chamber and put their robes on, and then they come out to their chairs. Then here's the 2 tables for the plaintiffs and the defendants. And they come before the judges at this table. And then those that might be a part of the family or press would be here watching the proceedings. Here are our justices. I guess I need to check if anything has changed there since that was 2020. You can see that one of our justices is in a wheelchair. And the diversity is not quite as diverse as the federal court. There are 2 women and 1 Native American. And I would guess that there would even be 1 or 2 of these or more have some, I would say, Native American blood, being from Oklahoma. So whenever we vote for a judge, so here's our county, right? We're in this 2nd district right here, or our counties. Whenever we vote on a Supreme Court justice, we do not vote for all of them. We only vote for our district. So our guy is Dustin Rowe. So let's look for Dustin Rowe. So he's on the back row, standing all the way to the right. So whenever his term comes up for a vote, we vote either to keep him or get rid of him. That's all we do. Nobody runs against him. It's only, do we retain him or do we let him go? We don't do that for the other 8 justices. Now, it's a little bit different than the federal level, where the government, the president appoints somebody and the Senate has to approve. Here, the governor does appoint a justice, but then the Judicial Nominating Commission would then have to interview, and then they get a 6-year term. And then after 6 years, they are on the ballot to be retained by the people or not. Notice here that the Oklahoma City area, Oklahoma County, has one judge for itself, and then Tulsa County has one judge for itself, because this is based on population. So we have about 3.3 million people in Oklahoma, divided by 9, and that's about how many people are in each of these areas. There's our Oklahoma court system. All right, you want to know what a petition for writ of certiorari is? A writ of certiorari. This is the beginning process of getting your case before the Supreme Court. If someone has lost their case on the state level, and then at the federal district court, and they want to go all the way to the Supreme Court, they have to write a formal, they have to give a formal request that is called a petition for a writ of certiorari. Here's an example of what it looks like. In the Supreme Court of the United States, Shaquille M. Robinson, petitioner versus the United States of America, respondent. On petition for writ of certiorari to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. A brief of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers as amicus curiae in support of petitioner. So that's kind of what it looks like. And so this comes before the court. And if I remember correctly, the Chief Justice will basically assign this to one of the other justices to look over. And what that judge is going to do is going to, excuse me, I've been having tummy troubles. What that judge is going to do is petition to see if the issue deals with the constitutionality of a law. Now, the Supreme Court of America usually gets over 9,000 petitions a year, but they only see about 10%. So that means, you know, what maybe 1,000 go through to the next step. Now, if they are rejected, that doesn't mean the Supreme Court disagrees with the lower court. They might just believe that the case is not that important of a public issue. Or it might be an issue that the court does not want to address. But whatever the Supreme Court judges decide, if something is rejected, then that means whatever the lower court decided, that is the outcome. It stands. So if a writ of certiorari gets by that first step, then the next process is that 4 of the justices out of the 9 have to agree to hear the case. So 4 out of 9. So the way the Supreme Court works is they will hear cases on Monday through Friday. And then on Saturday and Sunday, they will write their opinions. Now you need to be familiar with these opinions because they will be on the test. A majority opinion is basically the official opinion that the Supreme Court comes out with. And I'll show you an example here in a little bit. Now there's 9 judges, so 5 judges have to agree, and that would be the majority. So the majority opinion would be those 5 judges. If it was a 7-2 decision, then the majority is the majority of those 7 judges. The dissenting opinion is the opinion of those that were against it. And then a concurring opinion is a judge that is a part of this first group, the majority, but they did not agree exactly with the reasons for the decision. So let's say there's a 5-4 majority decision, and there's one of the 5 majority judges who has a concurring opinion, which means he agrees that it should be passed, but for different reasons. Any questions on that? So there's 9 of you. And let's say, I think 5 of you said Dr. Pepper was best. And so the other 4 would have been, you guys would have been the majority opinion. And the other 4 would have been the dissenting opinion. But let's say 4 of you said Dr. Pepper is better because it tastes better. And then one person, I think Hazel, liked it. Hazel agrees it's better than Mr. Pebb, but she doesn't agree that it's just the taste, but that it doesn't make her burp as much as Mr. Pebb. Okay. And I don't know if that's true. I'm not picking on Hazel, but that's her concurring opinion. Yes, Dr. Pepper is the best, but not just because it tastes the best. Okay. Majority opinion. So remember, they have to write their opinions on Saturday and Sunday, right? They just can't say their opinion. They then have to write it. And there's a reason why they write their opinions, because that is now a precedent, which means it's an example that is going to be something that future court cases can look to. All right. So when it's time to write the opinion, when it comes to the majority opinion, either the Chief Justice will write it if they are in the majority, or whichever other justice in the majority is the senior member. That is, if the Chief Justice chooses not to write the majority opinion, then it falls upon the next, it falls upon the judge who has the most seniority, the one that has been there the longest. And again, it reflects the views of the majority of the court, and it tells the outcome of the case and the reason for deciding it. Now, why do they write dissenting opinions? They are also a part of what we would call the judicial process. And they are something that also future lawyers and future law cases can look at. Their reasoning may become the basis for future majority opinions. Because as our society changes, so do the views of some judges, and so can legal opinion. Remember the Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, which said it was okay to have separate facilities for blacks and whites as long as the black facilities were equal to the white facilities, right? Remember drinking fountains and bathrooms and box cars on trains? It's okay to have a separate African-American boxcar. It's okay to have a separate African-American water fountain as long as it's equal to the whites, even though a lot of them weren't really equal. That was Plessy versus Ferguson. That was a Supreme Court decision, constitutional law. But what happened in 1957, right? Or 54? Brown versus Board of Education, another Supreme Court case, said, no, 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 that's not constitutional. Separate but equal is not constitutional, and it was struck down. So that's why the dissenting opinions are kept in the judicial record. Here's a recent case, Obergefell versus Hodges. June 26, 2015. This was the case that made same-sex marriages legal, and it struck down all state bans on same-sex marriages. Now, not all 50 states had a ban, but many states still had bans on the state level, including Oklahoma. So when this decision came through, Oklahoma state law was struck down, and therefore Oklahoma had to recognize same-sex couples that were coming for marriage. It was a 5-4 decision. These 5 judges were the majority. Now, in this case, the Chief Justice was not in the majority. Chief Justice Roberts was in the minority. So, who was the senior member that had to write the majority opinion? It was Anthony Kennedy. So Chief Justice Roberts wrote the dissenting opinion. Now, that was 7 years ago. Let me show you how much the court has changed. Justice Scalia died, and he was replaced with Gorsuch. Let me see here. Stephen Breyer, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and she was replaced let me go back first. Kennedy retired, and he was replaced with Kavanaugh. Ginsburg died, and she was replaced with Amy Coney Barrett. And then Breyer resigned, and he was replaced with Ketanji Brown Jackson. So in 7 years, 4 justices have been replaced. That's a pretty amazing turnover, considering that they are lifelong appointments. Now, what keeps our court, and I see that it's 11:46. So what keeps our court from getting power hungry? Well, the US Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, right? We are a nation that is ruled by the law, not by the courts. So other laws that keep the Supreme Court in check is the legislative law, and because the Supreme Court does review laws to see if they're constitutional, but that shows that the Supreme Court is under the Constitution's authority. They are not deciding what laws should be passed. They are deciding if laws hold up to the Constitution. Common law or case law is also another check or constraint. And this deals with precedent. And then guidelines that the bureaucracies come up with, which would be called administrative law, keep constraints on the court system. All right, very quickly, you need to know judicial review. In 1803, with the Marbury versus Madison case, this the first Supreme Court of our land came up with a ruling that brought this concept into full-blown view. The idea of judicial review, the original Supreme Court said, is found in Article 3 of the Constitution, that the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may establish. So in ruling on Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court basically asserted that they were the judicial power of the land according to the Constitution, which gave them the right of judicial review. Now, today we might hear someone say our Supreme Court is guilty of judicial activism. This is the belief that the court should be aggressive and be a part of making policy. For example, many conservative Republicans have believed that Roe v. Wade from 1973 was very activist in saying that abortion should be legal. Now that it's been struck down, people on the left and Democrats are saying our court today is very activist because they are messing with policy that had been in place for 49 years. So when people believe that judges are being very active and very aggressive to try to change policy, that is the belief that they're being judicially active.
Mr. Bings, it's 11:50.
Okay, the last thing is judicial restraint. People believe that judges shouldn't be active or activists, but they should be restrained. So these slides will be up for you to review and have for the test. Any questions?